The day has finally come for Absolute Batman issue 7.
Peak fiction.
And low-key, this freaking story is like turning into a horror movie or something, because in this new issue, not only does Bruce's childhood friend like die right in front of him, but we also get the first appearance of Absolute Mr. Freeze, and he's just ripped straight out of a nightmare. So with that being said, let's just quit with the yapping, jump into the breakdown, and just read this comic for you nerds. So we start off with a flashback in the middle of the Tanzania jungle, a bright, colorful, and beautiful place filled with exotic animals to the brim, and we have Victor Freeze and his son Victor Freeze Jr. Now Victor Jr. is really upset because he really likes the jungle and he wants to stay there, but his father expresses that they're headed to the land of the ice. However, before they could make it to this so-called land of the ice, Victor Jr.'s eyes started going bloodshot as if he was getting sick or having a terrible reaction to something, which immediately threw his father into a panic. But before being able to see how that situation escalates, the story jumps back over to present-day Gotham, where Bruce's friends were holding a little private memorial session for their friend Matches Malone, who recently passed away. And the name Matches Malone might sound a little bit familiar to some of you guys, because in the main universe, this is actually one of Bruce's alter egos that he uses to infiltrate the criminal underworld. But I guess in the Absolute universe, they're just making him an actual person. Anyways, after saying a few kind words about him, Harvey, Waylon, and the others started asking who was the last person to see him, which is when Bruce casually appeared out of nowhere, claiming that he was. After that, the story goes 1 week into the past to the very day of the incident, and we kind of find out how Match's death unfolded. So Bruce was walking on this bridge because him and Matches were gonna meet up together. But before reaching him, he indicated that Gotham had been such a mess lately in a bunch of different ways. For one, the entire city was under martial law now because of the whole Black Mask incident. For two, they were expecting to be hit by a freak snowstorm pretty soon. And for three, Bruce still hadn't figured out what exactly was going on at these black sites, specifically the one called Arc M that he discovered a few weeks ago. However, he did figure out that the crew building this site worked for a company called JK, and upon doing so, he called up his friend Matches to forge some work papers for him so he could get in on the action and figure out what was going down at this place. But for some reason, when their paths finally crossed, Matches was acting really strange and paranoid, behaving as if he was being followed or something. And it turned out that the reason he was acting like that was because he did even more than Bruce asked of him. Not only did he get him the papers he wanted, but he actually spent every day of the last week on Arc M's crew gathering intel from the inside. And upon finding this out, Bruce was pissed. He isn't exactly a fan of his friends or family putting themselves in harm's way. So Matches started assuring him that everything was okay and that the intel he got was worth it. The stuff they were doing at that place was downright wrong. And besides, Bruce was always such a good friend and he felt like he owed him. But before being able to further break down what terrible business went down at this place, for reasons unknown, every single pore in Match's body expanded itself way beyond their normal size until blood started gushing out of them so rapidly that he died instantaneously. Now, after that, the story goes back over to present day, with Bruce expressing that his theory was that whoever killed him used some kind of biological weapon. And upon hearing this, all of Bruce's friends were completely dumbfounded. However, they were also extremely upset with Bruce for not telling them that he was Batman, expressing that they thought he was dead and that whether he wanted to or not, they needed to talk about it. Bruce wasn't in favor of this at all though, indicating that there was nothing left to talk about and that he should have kept the secret apart from them because he didn't want what happened to Matches to happen to any of them. But that's when Waylon stopped holding back what he really wanted to say, stressing that they all knew why Matches was the way he was and implying that something bad happened to him when he was a child. Nevertheless, Bruce was adamant about getting back to work and finding out how Matches was murdered, so he ignored their remarks and started walking away from everybody, only for Waylon to demand his attention one last time by promising that he'd end up dead soon if he was really gonna distance himself from all of his friends. The story then advances into the future, with Bruce trying to evade police drones and the police themselves during this martial lockdown. And the reason he was doing so was because when Matches passed away, he dropped his cell phone. So of course Bruce grabbed it to look for any sort of clues, eventually discovering a list full of researchers and doctors from all around the world. The only doctor who had any ties to Gotham though was a doctor named Victor Freeze, who apparently pioneered a sketchy company regarded as VCore. So Bruce decided that tonight was the night he'd investigate what was going down at this place and how it was connected connected with Arc M. So after outmaneuvering law enforcement, he made his way into the facility by posing as a city engineer who was just doing a routine checkup. Now, the reason Bruce thought this place was so sketchy was because for some reason it pulled enough power to light up 10 city blocks. Like, what was going on for it to require that sort of power? Before being able to further investigate though, he was interrupted when one of the VCore employees decided to spark conversation with him, expressing that Dr. Freeze and his wife collected all sorts of wild specimens. So curious to know more about them, Bruce asked if they were still the ones to oversee this operation, to which the employee responded, "I guess you can say that," before clicking a button on a control panel, revealing that Freeze and his wife were completely frozen, and then indicating that he was their son, Victor Jr. Now, he knew that his parents being frozen in a giant block of ice was creepy, but apparently that's what they wanted. For some reason, they had a shared love of the ice and so much faith in their mission at VCore. So Bruce was like, well, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly was their mission? And surprisingly, Victor was really open about it, indicating that this was a place where people could preserve themselves in ice until cures for their deaths existed. That's what all the power went towards. A bunch of frozen people waiting to be woken up one day, including his parents. Now, of course, Bruce wanted to know as much as he could about this process, so he asked Vic if anyone had actually ever been successfully revived before, and as stated by Vic, he had been revived before. When he was a boy, he was diagnosed with a rare terminal disorder, which kind of goes back to the flashback we saw earlier in the jungle. But convinced that his condition wouldn't be cured fast enough to save his life, his parents froze him in a block of ice, promising that when he eventually woke up, the world would be a better place. Now, while Victor was explaining all of this, Bruce thought it'd be a good time to look around the room for any clues relating to Match's death. And sooner than later, upon finding an ancient bacterium on one of the nearby counters, he was 100% certain that Victor was responsible for his friend's passing. Unbeknownst to him though, the entire time he was sniffing out clues, Victor was undergoing a terrible transformation right under his nose, turning into some sort of giant ice monster, grabbing him by the face, and then slowly starting to freeze Bruce's entire body. But sadly, that's when this issue comes to an end. But if you guys want to see what happens with Absolute Batman next, let me know in the comments down below.